everyone, and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. Monday nights, we are back in action. All the tears have dried, the Kleenex is thrown away, and we are live. Usual crew, I'm the host, Timuchin, as always, here in Chicago. I'll do the weather update. It's pretty good, actually. Earlier storm, but we're happy. Dogs are happy. And the dogs have been introduced, thanks to Shelton, a little pick-me-up, if you will, when there's a storm, which Leo doesn't need, but Stitch definitely requires. So he's been chilling. He's like, storm, pfft, just pass it around. So it's all happy dogs in the house. Bickler is with us. Bickler, I just saw online, and everybody's in awe of your post and how you've been snooping on. What I didn't understand is you have to tell us the story, because it's going to be a lot about life and happiness and stuff like that. So you do have to tell us about the story.
Yeah, so you gave the dog update, right, on your dogs. I got mine to the groomer today, and she was like massively overgrown, right? Like she's a doodle with poodle-like hair. So she just became basically a mop over the course of the last few months. So I was picking her up. You know, they did a fair amount of shaming when I picked her up because they basically had to shave her, which I knew was going to have to happen. But they're like, yeah, you really should be bringing her in every 8 weeks. We say 6, but you can get away with 8. And I'm thinking, well, I'm going to get away with fucking once a year. How about that? Because it's like $160 every time I'm in there. I'm like,
holy cow.
We go every 8 weeks. I'm like, yeah, you guys hiring too? Anyway, so pick up the dog, and I'm taking the dog on a walk after work, and I'm just coming back, and this my older neighbors on these older hippie couple on the corner, super sweet. They have the little matching blue sedans, and he pulls up, and he's got a car full of grocery, and she comes shuffling down the steps to him, and she makes him drop the grocery bags and just gives him the longest, sweetest hug. And I was like, man, everyone deserves that. Everyone deserves at the end of the day to have someone who makes them drop their bags and just leans into it at the end of the day, right? So,
I got that part, but the photo that went with it implied that you were watching this from inside of a bush or something like that. Is this accurate?
I don't know where it's literally a picture of a dogwood tree, and there's a flower on the dogwood tree, and it was taken with portrait mode. So that part's the flowers, the front part, and then there's a blurred background. I don't know.
I didn't know that much thought went into it. I thought you took it really fast from inside the bush, and I was like,
I don't know how much Dateline you've been watching, but no, it was just a flower.
Also going around taking pictures of old couples is Gally. Gally, what's happening?
No. Let's not spread rumors. It's a lot of things that happen, but photos of couples isn't one of them. That was quite the post, Bickler. I was gonna wait till a little later, try to kind of warm it up and see if I could figure a way to work it in. I was gonna ask you actually.
Why is everybody so concerned about that? I've never.
I was worried.
I immediately got a bunch of texts that were like, "Dude, you need to talk." I'm like, "What?"
I do feel like it's almost a wellness check. I mean, not only do you bring it up to everyone to say, I hope you all find that, then you make sure to have the actual Bickler tagline at the end, which is, and to all my mortal enemies, I wish you death looking for this, which basically made me know at least I didn't have to send a wellness check out, because you were still a satirical bastard all the way down out in the banks of North Carolina, or where the hell you are. So I will say we're going to start this pod all over again, because the way this shit show got off the rails, we probably should.
Hold on. Before we start, here is the post right here, people. Here is the post. So,
yeah, I wanted to know if there was a bag floating around right now, right? Someone would probably be asking what type of an Academy Award you were trying to get, or you were trying to get Kevin Spacey a job back, because somewhere in that creepy backyard probably is Kevin Spacey walking around.
Listen,
hey, I'm in the blur.
I thought it was artistically done. Last time I tried to get artsy fartsy with my photos, Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when I first saw it, I was like, man, this is going way too nice and pleasant to be coming from Bickler. And right when I was getting worried, it ends with, and to my enemies, may you die trying to find it. I was like, there we go. There's Paul.
That's in classic meta version. They made you hit more.
You
could see the punchline. I bet he actually knew how many bars down he had to write to make this a more. To see how many people of his friends read all his shit. Which is basically 2, just so we're clear. These 2.
Oh,
Like the people that really know me though, how long do you think I could make you read something until you did that? Like 4 pages?
Cersei, meanwhile, is really,
Oh, the Dutch.
really cramming on Dutch over here in Arrival of Arnie. Isn't that like midday, like mid-doc, like mid-tog kind of a thing, or no? Well, I trust Alan because Alan knows Dutch. But as everybody gathers around over here, a lot to talk about. Obviously, I didn't even do trivia for you guys today. I figured we have all suffered enough over yesterday, so I didn't even do the trivia thing. I figured there'll be a lot to talk about yesterday. So let's put the truth hats on. Bickler, we'll start with you. Did you ugly cry? When and how long?
Didn't ugly cry, thankfully, because I had all the kids here and they would have been like, what's happening right now? No, I didn't.
Pictures of flowers and then this.
Dude, I got a little emotional in the morning. I've been distancing myself. Megan posted some dumb cartoon that got to me really unexpectedly. I think the only reason I hit play is because I was like, oh, this is safe. And like, it got to me. And then the other one was like probably towards the end there. When they showed Trent's face, like my lower lip started to go a little bit. It was like quivering a little bit when I saw Trent's face. That one nearly sent me. I mean, the whole thing stuff, right? I think I guess in some weird way, it does help that we've had 3.5 months to sort of like slowly emotionally prepare for this moment. So that definitely helped. I think that I purposely have distanced myself from it though. And I think that for some of us, like we're still probably going to process this over the summer still, even into early next year, you know?
I think so. Almost like until a game starts and there's a different guy on the sideline, it might not hit. But I've been like talking about this for a while. I mean, I feel like even though we knew it was going to happen for a while, it doesn't get real until it happens. I watched a couple of videos that made it get real for me. And honestly, I think the moment that I was like, I don't know, I was watching this in the car as we were waiting for Jasmine to get home before graduation, and I don't know, the windows are open, a lot of pollen. I don't know what was going on, but I was getting teary-eyed. And honestly, like it hits the most, and I was like, holy shit, moments where all the coaches left one by one and he was the only one left leaning on the wall. I do hope that is a photo somewhere, because I was like, you know, if Bickler was around the bushes, I would think he would snap a picture of that, because I thought that was like I was like, wow, it's here, like he's about to come out on the last one and stuff. Gally, when did you? I'm not even gonna see if you did. I'm asking when you ugly cried.
Oh yeah, I don't know if it was ugly. It wasn't as ugly as I thought it would be, to be honest. I was gonna go to the pub. I decided to stay home because I was like, I don't know if anyone needs to see that, and I don't know that I want to share this with anybody else. Like, I'd rather just chill here with the dog and Kelly, and I don't need to see 8 other games because I don't really care. I knew City was going to win the league. I had no doubt in my mind. I actually thought Everton would get something out of the Arsenal game. They probably should have at times. So Kelly came downstairs. I did the morning show. I did the pre-match show. And I don't know if you guys saw it, but there was a lot. You know, I shared emotional stories. I shared an emotional story about you too, Paul, to be honest. But two shared a story that was so much more emotional than even what I was talking about. You know, I was talking about like being divorced and it affecting me and how the club helped me through it. He was talking about like losing his father and feeling like he lost what made him love this club, and then Klopp coming back, bringing it back, and like this going like that to me was like probably the best thing that happened in our whole morning show. And so many people shared comments about it, which I thought was great. But I genuinely think the biggest thing for me was during the initial time, and I'm trying to really like put it together. It was probably right when they started to do "You'll Never Walk Alone," and Kelly started to cry next to me, and I didn't understand why Kelly was crying. And her whole point was kind of to what Kazi said in our thing today, was like, all I know is this man being manager and you being in love with this club. And I feel like I'm losing a piece of this today too. And I remember saying to myself, like, shit, she loves me this much that she's fallen in love with this club this much. And then she's like, and look at how much it means to him. And it's like right when they went to him and she's crying, and then the tears started. And then I stopped and then it didn't happen till the end, and we can talk a little bit more about it later. But that was, for me, it was the "You'll Never Walk Alone," because I realized it would be the last time he'd be there to hear it.
Yeah, I think like seeing him get emotional, like like a teary eyed there and stuff. Didn't do the ugly crying. But yeah, especially like his speech and that, like those last moments, seeing Trent get emotional. Honestly, like the thing that hit me the most, and I know because we're talking about this with Matush this morning too. It was Van Dyke getting emotional because it's a guy that you do not see emotional very often. And after that hug, you see Van Dyke, and you can tell like he's crying. I was like, holy cow, kind of an ordeal. So I mean, I don't know. Is that part of it, Bickler? The fact that like it's a freaking decade, man. I mean, like it's like freaking like losing a family member in some ways. And I know like most people will take that as like an exaggeration, but because of like American Scouser, and I think overall, even if we didn't do American Scouser, probably it's a huge part of our lives anyway. We kind of like live and breathe this club, so you are so involved in everything Klopp says and Klopp does. The pre-match, the post-match, he did this, he laughed at that, and stuff like that. So it is almost like a family member. And when somebody like that leaves, even if they were not the guy that they are, so we'll get to that, but even if they were not the guy that they are, just knowing somebody for that long makes it like a difficult goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think, I don't know. In sports, we see a lot of long-term managers. This one, and I've seen a lot of I would grew up a Tigers fan with Sparky Anderson, and like I've seen these long-term managers. What happens even with Jimmy Leland, like what happens when they leave and sort of announce that, it feels different to me. This one feels a little different to me. And I like, not just from because it happened to my club, right? I think it feels different because I think there was something truly magical, and I've been pretty critical of Jurgen from a tactical standpoint and from a squad management standpoint, probably more so than most supporters, but like, I do think there was truly something magical about just his persona in that city in particular, a Liverpool city. Yeah. I think there's something so genuinely blue collar about how he works and how he lives. And I think there's an authenticity that really rings true for a dock city like Liverpool. And I think the sort of these blue collar ethos, the belief in these fundamental socialist like ideas behind the club and the city that really match what he believes at a grassroots level. And I think I just think that his ethos and his philosophies on not only football, but in life, so magically meshed with what the city's core fabric is, that I think that is why it really felt like a death in the family in some ways. Like we celebrate, I've heard these guys talk about the Irish Wake, and it's true. We celebrate this departure and this next chapter for him, even if it's a death for us, right? But I think I feel that more so than I've ever felt in any sort of long-term either star player or manager leaving a club that I've ever supported, and that includes having Barry Sanders walk out when I was 9 years old at the prime of his career.
Yeah, I can only imagine that.
It feels different to me. It feels different.
See, I haven't now that you mentioned that, I didn't even think of that, to be honest with you, because obviously American sports is relatively, well, maybe not anymore, Jesus, because I'm an old fart, but like growing up, with Fenerbahce and stuff, I honestly, if I would have to go back and look, but I can't see anybody being a Fenerbahce manager more than 3 or 4 years, because it's like dog years. That would be like 28 years if they did 4. So I think maybe that's why it's not a concept I'm used to. For having some, especially when you're following it this close. Like I've been a Liverpool fan since 84, but probably the last 15, 20 years is where I've like really followed it close, and the last decade. And that's the thing, like everything, I guess, in some ways aligns with, I mean, this site started when he was in charge. And I really feel like, it kind of was a big reason why I started it, I think, because there was so much excitement about the club. I don't know if we start this now, because I felt like there's so many people that are so excited about this for good reason, like the club, the way the club is right now, and there's nobody to connect to. to kind of like go to another guy and be like, hey, because I can go around and work over here and tell everybody in the whole world, but except from Zbyszek, the older Polish dude who worked in the building materials department, nobody would give a damn about Klopp and Liverpool and stuff. And I was like, there has to be other people that are excited like I am that I would like to talk to. And that's kind of like, why I started this way back in the day anyway. And I think that's the thing, Gally. I mean, especially if you follow this club or if you followed any club and you go from, there was like one of the interviews that I think it was on Sky. One thing he said, because Angie and I at the same time said, holy cow, that is a great analogy. They were talking about, it was like a treasure chest and he kind of like cleaned around the cobwebs that are around it. So the treasure chest was always there, but you needed somebody to kind of get that out and bring it back out and bring the excitement out. And that's probably why it's so freaking valuable.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think that was exactly it. I think the first thing, for me at least, that he did was galvanize the group and actually make them believe. And I know the whole, turn us from dreamers to believers. And that was for the supporters. But I think at first he made them realize you can be better than you are. You're the better than the sum of your parts. And I think they built that up. And then from there, he actually made them believe in his football. And I think before he did any of the work on the pitch, he did the work in between their ears. And he was doing it, as we've seen, right, with like a really makeshift team. That team he first took over was not good. Even the second season was just a mediocre side. And it really got built after that. And he took the sum of other people's unused parts and made them better. I mean, he made Bobby Firmino. You see that stat that keeps going around where they show Firmino most appearances, third most goals, second most assists, like all the big numbers. It was all Bobby. And this was a guy who was basically cast off by Brendan Rodgers to the point where he acted like I didn't want this player. And I think at one point he actually said, I didn't want to sign that player. I wanted a different player, and the transfer committee bought it. To Paul's point, I think it was his political stance and his mind allowed him to gravitate to the people. And I think to your and Angie's point, it was a perfect analogy, because exactly what he did was he dusted up the big pile of turd that was the 8th place Liverpool. And he reminded everyone who loved them the whole time, let's be fair, the Jamies, the people who have been around for 20, 30 years and remember the 80s. Maka talks about how great they were in the 90s when people are like, they had down years in the 2000s. You're like, when we won 2 Champions Leagues. Yep. But he convinced people that, like, you can come back out and be a Liverpool supporter again. You can put your jersey out in public. You can pound your chest because we're going to get you back there. And I think that attitude, I don't think will leave the club. And I think he made a comment, I forget where it's quoted. He said, don't judge me about like how the club is when I take on and how it gets in the middle. You should judge me by what the club's like when I leave. And I feel like Jurgen Klopp is leaving this club in just about as good of a position as he ever could. And I think if this season hadn't gone as well as it had at the beginning, he might not have been so comfortable walking away. And I think it's why he signed that extension, because he didn't want to give the next manager an unenviable, untangible task. And I think he put it in a really great spot. And I think he put it in a spot where it can still take steps forward. And I know nobody wants to hear that yet, but that's what we should be rooting for. The next manager is hopefully going to be better than Klopp. Because if he stays 9 years, I'd like a couple Premier League titles. I'm going to be honest. That's what I want. Just like Klopp wanted a couple. And I think that would be a great thing if it happens.
I mean, I think the fact that, this shit doesn't happen. I mean, in sports, we're all sports people, so we follow sports forever. This shit doesn't happen a lot, where somebody's there for a long time and usually leaves. And when they're leaving, it's still like kind of disappointing and stuff, more of familiarity than anything else. But a part of you is like, okay, good riddance for about freaking time. You know what I mean? So, even when he left Dortmund, I think towards the end, it was not as, I know the season towards the end did not end as how we hoped, like midway through, but still, just like Gally was saying, Bickler, the potential and, the graph is, it's going up, and you can see, all the young players and stuff like that and what you can do and all that kind of stuff. So that makes it, I think, to me, really special. Like when he was over there, I even told Angie, and we were kind of in the car, like watching it on the phone, and I'm like, this shit just does not happen. Like where somebody is leaving and it's almost like maybe not the peak, but pretty darn close to the peak, and they're leaving, and everybody is like, just like thanking him for what he's done. I think everybody over there wishes he would stay, but I think, or let me ask you that, I guess, what do you think the percentage of people at the same time, kind of like Klopp says, change is good, that a change would maybe take that next step or change some things around that are maybe getting stale? I think maybe not people in the stadium. If you ask people in the freaking stadium, nobody's going to be like, yeah, change is good. But overall, do you think, like, where do you put that in terms of like a level of belief?
I still think you're riding a pretty high number that would rather just have Jurgen, Like, I would say probably like 2/3, 70% of people probably would want to stay with Jurgen versus people that are really ready for a change. And I think you're right. I mean, I think it is a rare and unique position in terms of where the club is. I think if you read between the lines in his last speech pregame, like when he's talking about like how this club has always surpassed his expectation. And he really alludes to the fact that he didn't expect this team to be where they were at any point during the season towards the top. Right. And so like, I think, that alludes to a team that's still ascending, A. B, I think what really makes it unique is not just like how people often don't go out on a high and how, it wasn't, it's oftentimes not a parade for somebody going on the way out, especially if they've been around for a long time. I think the craziest thing to me is the reaction from the rest of the league, right? I mean, a lot of people like to dog and make fun of Klopp, but at the end of the day, like the reaction across the league, not only from like supporters, but players, managers, all the way through the entire fabric of the league. I mean, you were looking at his post-game speech and his, departing shots are being tuned in at almost like a 70% clip. And the city parade and title winning thing is like sitting around 29, 30%. Like, I mean, it just goes to show you that, like, not only is it rare for a manager to go out with a club like that, but to go out from the entire industry really sort of stood and saluted him on the way out, which I thought was kind of special.
Because I think part of that is probably, Gally, is he's like that player that you hate to play against, but you would love to have him on your team. So even if people found his like antics or like sometimes his, complaining or, his sideline things, they would love to have that on their team. And I think, I don't know, maybe we're biased, but I always feel like you do see some managers on the sideline and you think they're kind of doing it for the cameras, despite the guy, how animated he is and stuff like that. Even from the get-go, I never thought like he was doing for the cameras. It just felt like this is the dude. Like you're getting every player and anybody who they talk to always says the guy, they ask him in interviews, you are getting what he is. There's not like a team Klopp, public Klopp, media Klopp. It's the same dude everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's what players and supporters of the club he coaches. I think supporters of other clubs would tell you they think that it's a big fraudulent and that the smile is sometimes fake and that it's not all real and that he plays it up for the cameras. I do believe that actually, and I've heard that from other supporters. What I will say is the outpouring love, like you said, from all across the league. Paul mentioned it. It came from all quarters. It came from former players, current players, his former players. It came from opponents. Like, I mean, I know we're going to have a post coming up in the next couple of days, a quote from Richarlison, and we love to dog on Richarlison, right? But you stick a microphone in front of that guy's scowl, you'd expect to hear drivel, even if it was like, wow, I thought he was good, but blah, blah, blah. And he was just like, despite the rivalry that was only on the pitch, you're one of the greatest managers I've ever seen. May God bless you in all of your travels. Now, that doesn't get said unless you have actual mutual respect for someone. Like, I don't think anyone invokes those types of words. And he wasn't the only one. There were so many people with the outpouring love for him. I wish he could enjoy it as much. And I've always said this, like, I don't feel like Jurgen Klopp actually enjoys being Jurgen Klopp as much as we enjoy having his personality be around. And I think even yesterday at times, as much as he was loving it, you know, that scene where he walks out and the marketing woman has to walk him back to the wall you're talking about and be like, no. And he's like, what? No. And they're like, no, first we're going to announce them one at a time. We got to bring everybody out. And you could tell he was just like, I need a cigarette. I need a drink. Did I tell you I need a cigarette? Like, have you seen my wife? I'd like a cigarette. Like, that's all he was thinking about. You could see it in his face. Like, just get me done with this. And even when he had to talk, like, it was almost like he didn't know how this was going to play out. And you and I both know they went through all of this in like a dress rehearsal at one point or another, and they knew what was going to happen. But
he wasn't paying attention, clearly.
But is the thing, he has given, outside of the football, I don't want anyone to get this twisted, outside of the on-pitch football, he has given 0 fucks for about 100 days. It is a good 3 months now outside of the on-field football. The interviews he's given, the things he's been willing to say, the shots he's taking at people. I mean, dude took a flamethrower to every single thing he ever walked a political line on. VAR, PGMOL, the officials, City. I mean, Pep's the greatest manager in the world, but we all, and I mean all, know how they've done this, and nobody will talk about it. I mean, this is a man with 0 regret because he knows he can say all he wants. He's going to be around a lot. He ain't Sir Alex. He ain't going to be in the stadium 15 times a year. We'll be lucky if we see him 2-3 times, in my opinion, in the home stadium over the next 2-3 seasons. Because I think he's going to take time to separate himself. I think he's more apt to show up on a Champions League night in Spain and just come check it out, sitting there with like his little imposter outfit on. He'll probably wear his glasses so nobody can recognize him. But like, I could see him doing that more than I could see him coming back and being at the club on a day-to-day basis. So for me, it just looked like a guy who really didn't care. He knew he had the admiration of his fan base. And other than that, everything else was gravy. And it was a surprise to me, to be honest, to see all the outpouring love. I thought there'd be a little bit more. We didn't do this for Sir Alex, and he was here for 20 years and won everything. And to be honest, they didn't. They didn't show his departure on national television.
Part of it says the problem is that he's become a global brand. As he said, I'm a normal person, just don't live a normal life, and that has to wear person. I think part of it is management too. I mean, honestly, man, ever since he could, and I think I mentioned it at the time way back too, but we were like, we keep talking every time something happens. I keep telling Angel, I'm like, hey, this is like when I quit. Like, I just get everything that he says when he said that. Because I mean, I talked about this before, that I worked at Menards for a long, long time. And retail management is a bliss, people. But, you know, like managing like 200, 250 people and stuff like that. And while it's exhausting, and some parts of it is like really, really fun. And I think that goes back to what you're saying, Gally. Like, while it's fun, you can never stop to enjoy any of that stuff, because it's always like the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. That's good. That's up. Okay, now we got to do this and stuff like that, because you're the driving force. You're the one dragging everybody and leading and stuff like that. And then once you check out and you say, okay, you know, I'm gone, it's almost like I felt the same exact way. And, you know, Bickler, you've done similar stuff. You can kind of stop and you can be like, I actually like this part of it. But now you can enjoy it. And now going back to what Gally was saying, you can say certain things, because before, when you say stuff, you think of the long-term implications. Like if you get up there and say, you know, City does it, but we know how they did it. Normally, you're almost like sending a different message, saying like, well, there's no way we're going to freaking do it because this is how City does it and stuff. So everything you say, there's a filter in your head that says, how is this going to affect everybody that's underneath me, the whole gang? Whereas once you're done, you can kind of say stuff, Bickler, and say, doesn't matter because it's so short term and everybody probably agrees with you anyway, but you don't have to think about the long-term implications. You can see whatever pops in your head.
I mean, yeah, he's definitely packed his bags and been out the door for, like I said, for about 3 months, but I'm here for it. I mean, I love that kind of, you can't fire me authenticity, right? Like, so I mean, here's the thing. Do you think Do you think he comes back and manages down the road? Not necessarily at Liverpool.
I think so. I think he seems like the kind of guy that will be like, I need to get back into it. I'm not getting back into retail management. I can fucking tell you that right now, Bickler, if that's the route you're trying to go. But you know, like
just a question. I was just asking a question.
Definitely not at Menards.
Definitely not. I mean, I feel like, you know, once you have that, I mean, you know, the good parts of it. I don't know, like I've had it where like you kind of want to get to the good parts about it, but you don't want the shit that comes with it either, because you know what a grind it is. I mean, I watched that guy yesterday. I listened to the speech that he gives at the end of the, you know, in the locker room, and you can kind of, first of all, you can kind of tell that he's overwhelmed, because this is a guy that gives speeches left and right, and that was like, you know, very, so you can see like all the ideas are constantly running through his head, so it's not a very well thought out and stuff.
I don't like. Did anybody else notice that he just sounded like Bilbo Baggins leaving the Shire? Like when he's like, frantically, when he's like sadly saying goodbye to something he doesn't want to leave but has to. That's what it felt like to me.
It sounded like the taxi was outside and the meter was running. Like he
right, and like he's like, I listen. I mean, I personally don't feel like he's going to come back in any capacity to football. And I know that's like an extreme take, but I'll tell you why, because I think he is an all or nothing guy through and through. And I think if he comes back, but like, I don't think that I think he knows he doesn't have the emotional capacity to do it the way that is required of him to be great. And so I really think that this is like leaving the Shire for him. I really do. And I like the whole international setup to me doesn't suit anything that he believes in as a football manager.
No.
Like the politics that are involved with international football, and he's built around like acquiring characters and personalities that he wants to have and mold into a team. Like that's just not the international job. So I'll be interesting. Gally, what do you think? You think you'll see him back?
So if you asked me to bet on it, like one way or the other, I would actually say if he was coming back to manage, it would be in a short-term capacity. Like I could see him literally like being a pundit in Germany, not a Jamie Carragher pundit trying to like stir up freaking getting clicks, but like a guy that sits at the desk, maybe talks about football, breaks things down. People forget how good he was on, I think it was BBC hired him the year after he left Dortmund, and he was outstanding because, again, when he doesn't have a job, he gives two shits, and he loves to give his opinion. I think maybe like Germany has a job opening and he could coach them through the Euros or help see them through to a next cycle and then turn it over. I could see him doing a short-term thing. I don't know that he would be able to come back into club management unless he only took like a year and a half tops off. And I just don't think he'll have enough time there to recharge. Like, had he not signed this last extension, if he had left the time we thought he was going to leave three and a half years ago, I think maybe then he would have taken 2 years off and taken a job in Spain. Like, he lives in Mallorca, right? That's where he's going. That's where his beautiful Sevilla that him and his wife owns, right? Their big villa. That's where they're going to spend their days, as he likes to say. Like, is he taking a mid-club team? No. Does he want to coach Barcelona? If he did, he'd be going there right now. And he's never going to be the coach at Real Madrid because they'd literally fire him in 90 days if he had 2 bad results because of Real Madrid. So to me, like,
listen,
it just
Mallorca's
doesn't
got a
make
team.
sense to me.
Mallorca's got a team, and they're in the Spanish First League.
But I'm pretty sure they almost got relegated like a year or two ago. Like, I'm not sure they're anywhere near what he wanted to do. And maybe I'm totally wrong.
He'd probably also be required to travel for away games.
I think that's the biggest thing. You listen to him, and that's, you know, you can kind of tell he probably feels, he looks at this team. I mean, obviously he's seen it all season, but he's like, man, there's so many good pieces. If you could only tweak this a little bit, tweak that a little bit, this is going to be the shit over here. This is going to be really good for a long time. But I think he realizes that's a lot of work, and he does not have the energy to put in that work and implement those changes. It's one thing to say, gotta do this, gotta do this, gotta do this, but I'm not feeling it. Not going to be able to give the full energy to do it. I agree with you guys though. I don't think the national team, like you were saying, Bickler, I don't think it fits his strengths of team building and stuff like that. You don't, you see him once every 2.5 months when half of them don't even want to be there because they got league games and stuff like that. So I don't think it fits what he's best at, which is team building. So I don't think he would want that. I would think he would come back to some kind of like a managerial, not a manager, but director of football or something like that, where he is still involved. You don't go from dealing with people, managing people 24/7 to just kick him back by the pool 24/7. I mean, you can for a week, you can for a month. I think 6 months to a year, it becomes, that itch becomes back. I would think you would miss that.
He likes those cigarettes. He likes them drinks.
You can only smoke so much, Gally.
He likes that. He likes that pretty young looking wife of his. Like he's got a pretty good thing that he hasn't spent any time with. Like he's got a really hot wife, and he jokes about it all the time. And someone asks him, "What's your happy or what are you looking most about or looking forward to most about?" And he's like spending 5 days a week with Ula because he has never done it as long as they've been together. Like. And great.
Yeah, we'll ask him again in 3 months.
I know. I was just going to say there's that old analogy, right? You show me a guy with the hottest wife in the world. I'll show you a guy thinking about something else. But like the truth be told, right? I think he's got some money. He's going to be able to go on all the holidays he wants. He's talked about wanting to maybe get back into the game and do some TV work and some other stuff. I disagree a little bit that I think as he got older, he could find ways where the international world would work for him as long as he had say in the youth setups as well. And I think a federation like Germany would give him carte blanche where he could be in charge of the under 16s, the under 18s, the under 21s. And now he's building something for the future of the country that he loves and talks so vibrantly about never really representing. And I think if you gave Jurgen Klopp a chance to finish, like there's a reason that Carlo Ancelotti has talked about taking over an international team. It's the only thing left in this man's career.
Yeah.
Like if Jurgen Klopp could win a World Cup with Germany or a Euros with Germany, like he puts himself at even a different level than a Pep. He puts himself at a different level than just about every manager.
Do you think he cares about that? Like I legacy, if you will?
I absolutely think he cares about it. And I think he would never in a million years say it. But I think anyone who takes shots at other people on their way out about how great they are and for the way that they got those plaudits maybe is a little mad that he isn't getting as much credit. Because he knows that there's people like Roy Keane that are like, was it really that great of a year? You won one Premier League and one Champions League in 9 years? How great of an era was it? There are people that will always throw those things out there that this was just okay what we did. And I think Klopp would love to stick it to people. He still reminds people of what he did at Dortmund and what no one else has done in the Bundesliga since.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Bick? But I personally think he's okay with, riding off to the sunsets as of now. I just go back to kind of like what Brian says. It's hard to flip that switch off, and you can switch it off for a little bit. I just feel like eventually he would want to get back into it. And can he do, I guess, halfway? And that's more like important, right? It doesn't look like a guy who can do halfway, like you were saying. So that's why the national team, and will he have the energy to do a club? That's why I'm almost thinking director of football, like consulting or some shit like that.
Yeah, I mean, the national thing Gally talks about makes sense. I just don't have as much faith as Gally does that he'd be able to make the politics happen in his favor there. Like, I just think there's too much money involved. There's too many moving parts. And there's going to be somebody that doesn't want that to happen for one reason or the other. But I could see it. It would make sense. I just think, I still think he's inclined to not come back. I really do. But if the entertainment thing makes sense, if you can make it work where, a couple months of the year he hops out off the island and does some stuff, I can see that for sure. I actually think the further he gets away from football, the less his desire to come back is going to be. Versus where some people it works the other way, where like the longer you get distance, the more they got a desire to go back. I actually see that the opposite with him.
If he did come back, right? We know he won't go back. Probably won't go back to the Bundesliga because he doesn't want to coach against Mainz or Dortmund. He's already said he's never coming back to England unless he was to manage Liverpool, and I don't think that would ever happen because, well, Edwards is here and he's in charge. What type of club does Jurgen Klopp consider if he's coming back?
It would have to be like another like Atletico Madrid type. You know what I mean? Like not the big boys, but can keep up with the big boys if things are done right.
So he'd go to like Napoli.
Yeah. But I mean, here's the thing. I threw Atletico Madrid out there. I'm not that familiar. I'm throwing the names out there more to go along with the level of team in terms of like being able to compete with the big boys, but not necessarily always considered to be a shoe-in like Barcelona and Real Madrid are, for example. I feel like that suits him more. But again, we go back to having a lot of energy to do that and, not going to be. That's why I don't think he would do it. And he's going to get older. You don't get more energy as you get older. So I can tell you
that's why I went with the international club. That's why I said the international club, because you don't work as hard.
I guess what I'm hearing is that you guys are passing on the Saudi league for him.
Maybe he'll get generational wealth over there.
The better chance he's coaching here in the United States.
Director of Dortmund is the rumor. So I have not heard that one. But I mean, something like that I think makes more sense to me. So he's still in. I guess the only question with that though is, can you have Klopp in a club as director of football a level higher, and then deal with them clearly less of a manager, right? If you're a fan of a team, aren't you going to say, okay, let's say if Edwards was like a Ancelotti or somebody like that, and you bring Slot in after like 3-4 weeks, you're like, why don't we just bring that guy in the other office down here? He knows what he's doing. Wouldn't that be an impossible job for any manager to work under Klopp, the director of football?
You can just ask Stan Van Gundy how that works. All right. That's what I got to say. Stan Van Gundy is the answer. You get this close, you decide you need more time with your kids, and the dude comes down with 4 rings and gets a 5th.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's it. But I don't know, man. I think Jamie says day one without Klopp, not really have this discussion. And I think, the thing that I like about and that's why I think Sergi was saying it way like in the earlier part of the show. When players leave, I was talking about it this morning as well. The Bobby thing hurt me the most because, like, to me, he's my favorite player because I almost see like his style and his personality and stuff like that. Do everything for the team, do all the dirty work, be very humble, and kind of like not get the spotlight, be okay with it, but have the freaking team revolve around you in many ways, as we found out after he left. Like, Gally found out, right, Bickler? That's when Gally found out as well. But, you look at Klopp, it's the same thing. I think more than the manager and stuff like that. I mean, if I'm still alive in like a decade or so, when I look back, I don't think I'm going to look at Klopp and the era as much of oh man, he was a tactical genius and those substitutions he would make or whatever. I'm just gonna look back and be like, he was like a great man. Like, I really like some of the things. I mean, we're old farts in different varying levels, me being the oldest fart, but like some of the things he says, I hope young people, I was telling Matush as one of the younger ones out of us, so I hope they listen to, because there's a lot of like so many good, valuable life lessons there. And that shit doesn't, Bickler knows, you can't, it's hard to pass that on to the kids as the parents. They have to hear it from a third party. And I feel like, some of the stuff he says about, I mean, I talked about this before. I'm not like a religious person, but even like the way he kind of like tackles that and looks at those things, looks about like being a good human and stuff like that. That's the part that I probably like about this guy the most, more than anything else. Like the Liverpool, daughters to believers and stuff. That's all fine and dandy. But to me, like that's like the biggest thing I will always remember with this dude is the guy that he is. And then you listen to that speech, and that's why I think I got teary-eyed the most. You listen to that speech and you're like, yes, like the whole thing he does with Arnie and stuff like that, and the things he says. It's like if he ran for election over there, like he would win immediately. He's that kind of a guy that everybody would follow.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think that's how you get a bunch of personalities in a locker room to gel, is when you got somebody like that to rally around. You know what I mean? And I think he did a good job of like finding personality traits that he had that other players had, and kind of making those cornerstone pieces to the team, right? So I think like, yeah, I mean, you say we're not gonna remember like the magical second half tactical changes, right? But I think what we will remember is like how much heart those teams that Klopp managed played with in terms of togetherness, right? Like I think it's pretty rare in this day and era where you see players make the kind of wages they make come from the places they place, put them all in a room together in a competitive environment, and they play like brothers. That's not common. Like, and that's what he did, is he got these guys to play like brothers.
By the way, I think Sergi was saying that, and that's why, like, in terms of like the parallels, I was more going with not like the the mindset of the teams and like their fan base and stuff, but in terms of like the level. See, Laurel says the same thing. I was pretty much, but she was ugly crying. See, like I did fight the ugly crying, but I mean that's the thing. I think Gally is like the personality wise, and you hear from the players. I think that says a lot by himself too. Like you'll get some players who will say he made me a better player and stuff like that. But the biggest thing I heard over and over and over again is, like Jamie's saying in the comments, like making you a better man, making you a better dad and stuff like that. Because it's almost like he was a manager / a father figure. And it's just the way he carries himself, the way he says certain things that you kind of absorb. And like he doesn't like teach you the game. It's almost like look like he taught people like life. Or is that too much of a right?
No, I think it's spot on. I think actually that's his number one characteristic. I think honestly, the number one thing Jurgen Klopp brings is his ability to connect with different people and make them to see the common goal, while also understanding their individual goals will be succeeded as well. Like he's done it with so many players. He's asked players to take different roles, whether it was even Maka earlier this year playing the 6 at the beginning of the year when the side needed it. Like you sacrifice for the team, but it will be for your betterment, better moving forward. The players who gave up time, we talk about Bobby. Bobby could have scored more. Bobby could have been a more prolific figure in attacks. Hell, Sadio Mane was the focal point of the attack until Mo Salah showed up.
Yeah.
And then was asked to not only take a back seat, but to do more work on the other end, which he was already working his tail off, right? Like to make up for what was happening on the other side. And by the way, don't complain about it when it gets blown up in the papers. And I think he did make people better men. I mean, Andy Robertson talked about it. There's some great quotes out there. I mean, Dejan Lovren had this like love fest of a quote today where he basically just talks about how like people don't even realize how like he had him at his like how during his toughest times, like those dark times when he's getting death threats and hate mail at Liverpool by our supporters, by the way. They're not the racist fascists that root for Napoli, but we got some shitty supporters too. When they were ripping on him and going at him, it was Klopp that like made him realize like, you're still a good father, you're a good man, and look at all these teammates who have your back. So why do you care what these people on social media say? Like, I think he's done so much for the young players. What was it? 41 players got their senior debut in his 9 years from the academy. That's ridiculous.
I know they threw like another number in the 60s, but I can't remember the criteria, like 18 and under or like teenager or whatever it was. But they threw another number like middle of the game, and I was like, holy cow, that's a lot.
Yeah, and I might have been wrong. I thought it was 40 plus getting their debuts, but I could be off. I might even be low. I just feel like there's so much. We could talk for days about what this man brought to the club, but I think the biggest thing for me is he restored stability and order in the Liverpool way. And I don't even know if this is the Liverpool way that was before, but I think the Liverpool way I've understood is it's when the supporters, the manager, and the players are all on the same page. And I've never seen that, honestly, in my 46 years, be performed better than by what Jurgen Klopp has just done over the last 9+ years. And to me, that's his everlasting legacy. And I hope these players recognize the opportunity they have to help usher this club and help Arne Slot take over. Because it's on the players now to carry on what Klopp instilled in them. It'll be a new method. It'll be a new voice. It'll be a new message. But I do believe that they have in them what they need to do to help it go forward and succeed. And they have to be as open-minded to the next guy as they were to everything he said. And I think if they are, I really believe Klopp's true legacy might be 5-10 years down the road when the club is just as well off, if not better, than when it was when he left. And I think that will be the legacy he looks back and will be so pumped about, in my opinion.
I mean, I think that's the thing. You know, listen to like Alisson talking about like when he lost his dad and stuff like that. He was like the main one that, you know, talked a lot about that, you know, being a better man and stuff like that. You can tell like how he can relate to the players. But I think like Bickler, one of the things, you know, you look back and you listen to Klopp and, you know, I realized the first team he took over did not have like, you know, a lot of, it wasn't the greatest squad and stuff. But I think what's special is to be able to create a team who goes around, and I think this is why I love this era and why I love this team. Because, you know, the Liverpools in the past, yeah, you did have some superstars, and I know it was like a different era. The game was different and stuff like that. But I feel like this is like really unique where it's had the feel on paper, it felt like it's a bunch of guys who are actually not that good, but they play together so well and stuff like that. But honestly, it's not. They're all, you know, like you have players who are like some of the best in their field, but still you have those players play in a system and play in a way that's, you know, it almost gives the illusion that they're not the best in what they do and they just happen to be really good together. That is like a really tough task to accomplish and get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, and I think that really comes down to two things. One, right, is like how just absolutely average the side that he got to start ascending was. And then the second thing is the fact that we're in the financial doping era of Manchester City, right? And I think when you look at like what the way that this club is operated in comparison to New Chelsea, to Old City, to some of these clubs that are like going to even Villa and Everton, really, in the way that they spent. And like, I think people see how we did business in the comparison to some of these teams and thought that like we were just obviously always overshooting and working miracles with average players. And really, you know, at the end of the day, we're going to have, you know, if Mo stays another year, we'll see what happens there. But like we will have had Mo for, you know, arguably the best, one of the best frontline players in world football for how many seasons? 6-7 seasons at least. Like, I mean, so it'll arguably one of the best defenders in Van Dijk, and arguably one of the best goalkeepers in Ali, and, you know, arguably one of the best right and left back. Like, I mean, you could go down the line, right? I mean, yeah, I think the quality of the side got overlooked. We got overlooked because how it started and what he did with that mediocre team. And then, of course, comparatively what we did from a business standpoint.
But I think like the way he manages them too, Gally, like he didn't manage them like they were like stars. It was more about, you know, you are better when you work together and play together and stuff like that. By the way, like I know like Philip was saying, you know, like we know slots, and I agree. Like I think these things make you really tricky for him, but he seems to be in the class. I'm not buying this from Sir Z that Klopp didn't buy world class players. I mean, I definitely agree that the system they played in definitely improved them, but you know, like when you had like Alisson, and Alisson was already a great goalkeeper. Except the only people who poo-pooed Alisson was like Liverpool fans who said we scored 5 on him. How good can he be and stuff like that. I think over time we have gotten some like world class players like added onto the mix. I don't think you can argue that he improved them. But before we get to slot, because I feel like we're going to get the slots. We have all summer to get the slot. I figure like, this episode we will kind of like wrap up, do the farewell to Klopp thing, which we'll probably keep talking about anyway. There's no way we can fit it into an hour. But Gally, I mean, the hardest parts, obviously, there is not going to be the squad. There's going to be the continuance. There's going to be implementing changes. What is the biggest challenge of following Klopp?
I mean, I think the biggest challenge of following Klopp is the enormous expectations that come with what we have built here. I mean, we go into every season on a bad season expecting top 4. Like, I expect this team to be really good next year. I expect too many bad slot,
the over under is
all
on like
year.
an infinite. Yeah,
it's unbelievable. No, I really do believe though, like, we can all clown on Chelsea's season, right? They ended the year on 5 wins in a row, playing pretty good football, almost made 2 cup finals, and they were 4 points off Champions League. Like, we clown on them, but they ended finishing with a pretty good season. I think Chelsea will improve. I think Chelsea will be closer to the top 4 next year than they will be away from it. I think depending on what they do at United, it might start to get better if they sell a few of those bad eggs and bring in a few better players, maybe get a good coach. This league is going to get more competitive. And for those that think that it's all just kind of the players, I think Klopp had a lot to do with it. So I think Slot really needs a first season. So I think the biggest thing is like shadowing expectations. The best thing for him, in my opinion, is that Edwards and his team hired him. So they have a commitment to him the same way they had a commitment to Brendan Rodgers when they hired him. And I think they will give him the time. And I think he is a very, very good tactician. And, all I have to say is just go on YouTube if you haven't and watch the send-off his club gave him.
Yeah.
Because the love affair that was happening there wasn't far from what happened here. And he did a harder job there, people, because they play in one of them leagues where only 2 teams are supposed to win, and he won it all.
Yeah.
With less talent and no money. So we should be psyched and pumped. So my biggest thing is if supporters are as excited as I am and get behind them, I think it could be like a match made in heaven. And like you're not getting Jurgen Klopp 2.0. Hopefully you get Arne Slot 1.0. And if he can do that, it'll be a success. If people just keep comparing him to Klopp, it's unfortunate, but he probably has no chance.
I mean, that's going to be, I think, natural, right? You're the next guy up. You're always going to be compared to the guy before you. But, I guess the best way, and we were talking about this morning with Mateusz, I mean, you either have to do your business before the Euros or because it's probably after Euros too late. But to me, Bickler, if you want to, get people like us to stop talking about Klopp, for example, because maybe Philip is right. Like maybe we should have been talking about slots. The worst kept news got official today. So maybe we should have been talking about that instead. But to get people like us and the fans in general, nobody gives a damn about what we talk about, but other fans in general, is probably doing some business and doing it early to get people excited about the new regime as soon as possible. I mean, that's why I kind of predict almost like now that this is official, there'll be some stuff happening pretty darn fast here. Where are you with that?
I would be shocked if there wasn't an announcement by this weekend for somebody. I really think it's going to happen quick and early, especially with the Euros out there and being a summer transition with the new manager who's going to want as much time as he possibly can with any new signings. I really think you're going to see a lot of business on the front end here. And then, I think you're going to see a lot of movement too on the back end. Maybe 1 or 2 surprises from the squad. But I think there's going to be a lot of older players that are moving on too on the back end through the Euros while the Euros happening, that business happening. So, I'd be shocked if I don't hear something this weekend. I think there's going to be something really, really early.
How about you, Gally? I mean, in some ways, you want to wait for the the Copa America and the Euro to sell, right? Possibly to increase the value, kind of a thing. And most clubs will not want to sell, possibly, because they might say, hey, if he has a good game, I mean, if he has a good, tournament, the price can really go up. It's kind of like, do you roll the dice or not, kind of a thing. Do you expect us to, or do you agree with me and Bickler that the business will be done really fast over here to get the new era started? Almost like kick-started, if you will.
I do think the business will be done pretty quick, but I don't know that there's going to be a ton of new incomings if there aren't a bunch of outgoings. So it's really our other clubs trying to buy now. And as we know, Edwards doesn't sell low.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a little bit of that gamesmanship that'll happen. So I could see us making a purchase or two quickly if we have players that are lined up and we know we're getting. Like if we want X center back and that's the guy, then I hope they get out there and snap him up right away. But like a guy like Joe Gomez, could he not move until after the Euros? I could see that happening when a team like West Ham finds out they missed out on two different guys across Europe and now they need a center back type of a player. I feel like there needs to be some quick movement in a few key areas, but I also think this squad is pretty deep until you start to factor in the outgoings. And I think the manager needs to come in with an idea of what kind of formation he's going to play and probably see these parts a little bit, right, before he knows exactly what he needs. And I'm with Paul too. Like everyone's like, oh no, he's just a coach. That's a problem. I genuinely think him being a coach is a good thing because that allows him to focus on his job and let other people focus on theirs. But he's going to get a say in the players that come in. Yeah. I just don't think he's going to get, like Paul, I don't think he's going to get as much of a say on the players that go out because that's about business.
Yeah.
And, I don't think Trent's going to get sold. I don't. But I'll tell you what, if Real Madrid comes in with a 6-figure offer for Trent Alexander-Arnold, Michael Edwards will think about it.
Yeah.
He has 1 year left on his deal. This is what you do, and this is why you want ruthless business people in charge of your club, to be honest. I know we don't want to hear that, and I'm not saying I want him gone, but any player, in my opinion, every single player right now is under evaluation between now and the first day of next season by the manager, by the new powers that be, and by the financial people who look at value. Because we stopped over the last 3 seasons signing and re-signing players based on estimated and future value. We signed them based on some nostalgic pieces and drive. And I think those days are gone. And I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see a new era of this club. And it's going to be interesting to be how it works.
See, I honestly think that's actually all done. I mean, I don't think there's any evaluating. I really feel like, he's already... all the stuff has been talked. There's a good idea of what that's going to be happening. The only thing is there might be curveballs being thrown, like you're saying, Gally, somebody coming in and making an offer and stuff like that. But I think they're, in terms of how they want to shape the squad, what kind of players they want to bring in. And yeah, if Bickler is right and those names are going to be announced, which people to target and which people to approach and stuff like that, I really feel like a lot of that stuff has already probably been done. So, it's going to be interesting to see how fast it's done. I mean, to me, like I said, the best way and the fastest way to bring up like the new era and have us more talking about that is probably the way to go. Before we head out real quick, any parting thoughts from yesterday? We'll start with you, Gally, in terms of, the ceremony or whatever from the day. Any parting thoughts?
I thought they did a wonderful job. I thought the people in the grounds were outstanding. The supporters were great. I thought they sent Klopp out right. And I think the players on the pitch did the best they could to put in a good performance in a weird afternoon playing against 10 men with all the emotions that came around it. I thought they did a nice job. They got 3 points. I would have liked to see it be a little bit more clinical. But honestly,
right,
the best part about it, the best part about yesterday, honestly, was that we didn't have to come here today and talk about any BS of the game. But I did find it funny that it took one VAR decision and that made Wolves go down to 10 men.
And the goals, yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I was like, no, this is why they don't want it. How about you, Bickler?
Just, man, it's sad to see this chapter close, but I'm also excited for the new one to begin. And I'm excited both for Jurgen to be able to, he gave 9 years of his life to us in this club. Hopefully gets 9+ back to do what he needs to do and be what he wants to be outside of football. Excited for this new chapter. I think it's going to be an exciting summer. Man, like as I get older, change never gets any more, easier. But like I've grown to be slightly excited by new possibilities with that. So let's see what happens. Let's get this thing going. I'm ready to see what happens.
So you're saying as you get older, change is more difficult, or?
No, it never gets any easier, but I've learned to sort of like lean into some of the change and excitement that comes with it.
Yeah, I agree to that. I think maybe perhaps as we get older, you have seen how change can impact positively, right?
Yeah, and maybe you're less afraid of it, right?
Yeah, because when you're young, you're like, this is the best it can get, like you don't know any other. But I think over time, you see certain things, you're like, yeah, I know. At one point, I thought it was the best too, but then this happened and it got better, kind of a deal. So yeah, I agree with that. I think it does kind of make it easier to accept change and look forward to something. But yeah, I mean, I highly doubt we're done talking about Klopp, but I do really think with the slot era beginning, we'll probably start talking about some other stuff, and it will be like a positive look. And then the Euros around the corner before we know it. But we can probably go on for. Go ahead.
We can play your favorite game eventually, Tamuchin. We can play the Liverpool transfer slot machine where we pulled the.
Oh, did you do that slot machine on purpose, or that was just a coincidence?
Faces.
Yeah, I know. I hate this time of year. That's why I just hope, hope they sign a bunch of people and then we move on. But yeah, I mean, we can probably have like a 10-hour episode over here and do some ugly crying on air. But before we get there, let's end this over here. We'll be back in action next Monday. But of course, before then, next show on air will be the Wednesday morning show. I'm sure throughout the week as we get more and more contributors. I love that pre-match, actually. I know we have a couple of clips going out from it because I think there's a lot of personal stories regarding not only Klopp, but I think what Liverpool and the Klopp era has done to some people, and overall, and honestly, like Liverpool, and even above Liverpool, I think sometimes just the sport itself, the beautiful game, kind of an ordeal that not everybody will probably understand, but if you know it, kind of an ordeal. But hey, have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you guys next week. Take care.